In this video tutorial we'll take a quick look at using the Freeform Tools to build a box from scratch. You will learn how to start a freeform project, add flaps and panels, use the different methods for adjusting the height of the flaps and panels, and how to do some simple modifications. Let's get started. To begin, click on the Freeform icon. It's the icon that looks like a three-dimensional box with a plus sign on it. This will open the designer window. In the preview pane we see the baseline, which is the starting point for the freeform object. Before you begin to edit anything, you may want to set or check the material thickness. You can do this later if you like. But for this example we are going to make some changes. Check the box for materials in the Edit Options section, then from the Materials group drop-down, select Corrugated. For the materials name, select Sea Flute, which has a thickness of 4.8 mm. We are done with the material, so uncheck its box and place a check in the box for the dimensions. Set the baseline to 200 mm. Right-click on the line to bring up the context menu. As you can see, we have a lot of different options here, but we are going to go down this list and left-click on it line, and in the next menu, select Add Basic Flap. You can hold down the mouse and drag out the length of the flap. But, in this case we want to use the active section to set the height of the flap. So let's change the height to 300 mm. Another way we can set the section height is by using the quick entry dimensions. To use this method, type 125 mm in the first edit box, 200 mm in the second edit box, and 50 mm in the third. Right-click on the right-hand edge of the active section, and instead of selecting from the menu items, we can use the shortcut keys. Type on the L, and then the F key, and then hold down the number 1 key to select the first quick entry dimension. Click the left mouse button to complete the selection and place the second panel for the box. Double-click on this new section to make it the active section. Right-click on the right-hand edge as you did before and repeat the previous action, only this time hold down the number 2 key. Finally, repeat the whole process again using the same steps you used for panel number 2, to complete the panels for our box. Now we want to create a lid flap for the box. Double-click on the main panel and then right-click on the top line and select Add Line, and Add Basic Flap. This time we'll hit the period key to bring up our precision input window, which is a third method we can use for setting the height of our flaps. Type in a dimension of 125 mm and press OK. We also need a tuck flap to close this box. Double-click on the lid flap and add a basic flap to the top line. Hold down the number 3 key to set the height to the third quick entry dimension. Rounding the corners of this flap will make it easier to tuck in. Right-click on the corner point and use the shortcut keys P for point, followed by the R for rounded. You can freehand the radius by left-click and holding the mouse button down while dragging, or you can press the period key and set the dimension with the precision input window. I will enter 30 mm and click OK. We could use this same process to round the other corner, but we can easily repeat the last action we performed using another shortcut. Left-click on the corner point and hold down the Ctrl-R keys. We now have a lid flap with the tuck flap. Next we need a dust flap. Make the second panel the active section and use one of the methods we've learned to create a basic flap. This time hold down the left mouse button and drag out the flap height. If you look in the lower right-hand corner of the preview pane, you will see the dimension for the height changes as you drag the mouse. Dragging up or down set the height to be around 75 millimeters. Don't worry if you're not exact. Next we need to create a glue flap. Using one of the methods we've learned so far, create a flap on the left side of the main panel. Set its height to 50 millimeters. For this flap we want to chamfer the corners. Right-click on the corner point and use the shortcut keys P and C to activate the chamfer tool. Drag out the chamfer until it looks to be the right size, then click on the left mouse button. Use the repeat command on the opposite corner to complete the glue flap. Before we add the remaining flaps, let's set the offsets for the lid and dust flaps. With the lid flap selected, go to the Active Section Properties and click on the Edit Offsets button. In the Override Offsets Properties, click on the Configuration drop-down. I can select left, right, both left and right, and so on. For this flap we want to select left, right, and top. I'll check the boxes for all three in these settings so they will automatically use the material thickness for their offset. Click OK when you are finished. For the dust flap we only need to edit the left and right offsets. Using the same process as the lid flap, set the offsets for the dust flap to use the material thickness. With the step complete, all we have left to do is copy and paste the remaining flaps. Double-click on the lid flap to make it the active section, then use the standard shortcut, Ctrl+C to copy. Select the third panel and click on the bottom line and use Ctrl+V to paste the copied section. Do the same thing for the tuck flap. Lastly, we need to add the remaining dust flaps on panels 2 and 4. Copy the dust flap we have already finished and paste it where needed. Make sure the mouse is above the line before you click to place the flap on panel 4. Before we end this tutorial, let's have a look at our box in the 2D view to see how it's shaping up. Very good. This is the end of this tutorial. Please watch the second half in tutorial 102.